Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the October 16 episode of From a Poet's Point of View. I'm Sister Joy, your host, and we have quite an exciting lineup of power hitters today. This is an episode that I frankly have been waiting for some time. Let me officially open by saying that this is a program offered by the Prince George's Office of the Poet Laureate. It is our 2021 National Arts and Humanities Month celebration. As indicated a moment ago, I am Sister Joy, Poet Laureate of Prince George's County, and today's event is presented by the Prince George's Arts and Humanities Council with support from and in partnership with the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, the Prince George's County Memorial Library System, and the Nora Roberts Foundation. We greatly appreciate their support and thank them for it. And I also want to thank Prince George's Arts and Humanities Council Director of Development and Community Grants, Sherry Bryant Moore, for going above and beyond by providing the Zoom technical support for today's event. Thank you so much, Sherry. And Sherry's going to ensure that guests are admitted during our time together today. And also, I will be checking the chat for comments. This event is part of a year-long series From a Poet's Point of View, which is, of course, October. So this is the 10th episode. And it takes place every third Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We thank everyone for joining us. And as usual, we know that our numbers will increase during the 2 hours that we're together. Now, at this monthly event, poets both present and discuss their original poetry, and they also discuss issues of significance that move them to write or in some way connects them to poetry. They also respond to questions in the Zoom chat. So that means that you, our guest audience, are a part of what drives this time together forward. So to that end, please post your questions, your comments, and feedback in the chat. Now, it is my honor and privilege to present the three dynamic poets who will be joining us today. They are Dr. Joanne Gabbin and Alleyne from the Furious Flower Poetry Center, and the New York Times award-winning poet and author, young adult author primarily, Jason Reynolds. Welcome to each of you to the From a Poet's Point of View family. Now, let's see, poets. Please feel free to present poetry that addresses issues of significance and relevance to you. Accordingly, this will be an open forum and a literary discussion presenting your views on topics of your choice. So each poet is invited to present and discuss. We'll start with 2 poems on a topic of your choice, and then discuss how you approached writing the poems that you selected. And of course, share information about your writing style in general. We want to know things like how you conceived a particular, what was the inspiration? What's the backstory? And what is your methodology for crafting the powerful and engaging poetry that you're known for? And for those who choose to write on topics of social consciousness, how do you feel that poetry can be a tool for social change? Generally, as a writer of great poetry, and that of course is each of you, how much editing is enough to take a poem from good to great? So these are the things that we want to share, and we want to get from the genesis of inspiration to that final stage, the publication, and sometimes the presentation on stage, that live performance that brings poetry alive. So why don't I start with our poet number 1? And poet number 1 will be Lauren K. Alleyne. And Lauren, am I pronouncing your name properly?
I go Alleyne.
Alleyne, okay. I am so very honored to have Lauren with us as a featured poet and to both share her poetry, but also to share her journey as a writer and educator, and also one who invites others to reflect upon the meaning of their journey. On her website, Lauren posted, I'm going to just read it here. I am a woman. I am a woman of color. I am a woman of color living in a foreign country. I am a woman who has found her home in words. This is the voice from which I speak and the voice that drives my writing. Lauren is the author of Difficult Fruit, Peapal Tree Press 2014, and Honeyfish 2018, Green Rose Prize, New Issues 2019. Her work has been awarded many honors and has been widely published in journals and anthologies. I don't want to start the list because we'll be here all day. But Lauren is the assistant director of the Furious Flower Poetry Center. She's also an associate professor of English at James Madison University and the editor-in-chief of The Fight and the Fiddle, the quarterly journal of the Furious Flower Center. And for those that are new to the Furious Flower, just in a nutshell, this is the nation's first academic center for Black poetry. Furious Flower was established on the James Madison University campus to serve creative writers, literary and cultural scholars, and poetry lovers everywhere. I'm cutting back because Lauren, I had so much exciting information about you, but I'm going to tell our friends and our viewers to simply visit your website because we want to hear from you. So I'll start with this question number one. Tell us why issues of race, gender, and social justice are important to you, and when did you decide that this would be a focus in your writing? Lauren.
Thank you so much, first, Sis Joy, for the invitation to be here, to be in this awesome company, and to be having this conversation as a poet and a teacher of poetry. Like, you know, this is my jam. I just want to talk about this stuff all the time. And so it's just great to be here with everyone. So again, like my, that personal statement is when I came up with when I was applying for my MFA program.
Okay.
And I've just kept it. And I even just recently wrote an essay that talks about why I keep that essay and how, that beginning, because it sets a framework for where I'm coming from, and setting your own framework is important. I am a woman. I'm a Black woman in America who was not born in America. And so there's so many frameworks that come into being just in that body, just in that consciousness that I inhabit, and seems to me, normal, right? But
Right.
Again, one of the things that moving to an American context made me realize is, one, it highlighted those as maybe not the norm. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. I don't need to run around saying I'm Black in a country full of Black folks, right? I went to all girls schools, so gender had a completely different meaning for me, right? And so again, thinking about how those contexts are at once, like for me, very clear, solid pillars of my identity, and how also they change when I go to other places. I am a traveler. Well, before COVID, I was a traveler.
Yes.
And what it means to be an immigrant Black woman who lives in America in the Middle East is different than what it means to be a person in Europe, right? Or formerly, when I went to Spain, or it's just different. And so that's sort of, I don't know where else I would write from, right? On the one hand. And of course, there's also the moment you make the choice that is not only where you're going to write from, but you're going to make that overt and clear. And I think that's been important for me too, to say those words constantly and firmly, so as to create my own narrative space, right?
Right.
I mentioned that I was from Trinidad, and my sister sang calypsos. She was a junior calypsonian. She was singing since she was like 8 years old, and I was writing her calypsos since I was 11 years old.
Oh my
And
goodness.
calypsos aren't the hot necessarily that Americans know, but it's actually songs of social consciousness, of political
Ah,
critique. Calypso and carnival is when the calypsonians get to sing all the things they think about the government, all the things they think about the politicians and what
I
they're
didn't
doing.
know. I never knew this. Okay.
I feel like it pulls in their private lives. I mean, all bets are off, right? And that's from the tradition of slavery, right? Of carnival and like those suspended moments of speaking truth to power where Black folks could just say whatever they want with no repercussions. And so for me, writing and particularly, again, at the time, I wouldn't have said I was writing poetry, but that writing, it's natural to talk about social justice, social conditions in poetry, in verse and song. And so, yeah, I would say that's just been in my blood and in my upbringing.
Okay. Well, you certainly answered the question about the travel and the issue of social consciousness being your focus of your writing. And of course, as a Black woman in America, we have to address these issues if we have any consciousness whatsoever. With regard to a signature poem that you think would set the stage for our guests to get to know who is Lauren as a poet. Let's jump right in and say we'll come back to some questions a little later, but give us a taste of Lauren.
I don't know if I'd say it's a signature poem. That's oh, I was like,
okay, well, it doesn't have to be
I know. But I'm going to start with the first poem in my second book. In Honeyfish opens with I think something that I think speaks to the conversation we'll be having, and it's called Poetry Workshop After the Verdict for Trayvon. And just to put a little context around the poem, I wrote a lot of poems when I was at the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown. And I was there when the Zimmerman verdict was given, and many poems in this book happen in that space. Poetry Workshop After the Verdict for Trayvon. Morning lights your four windows and you wake. It is already another day. You stumble befuddled into the bathroom, so white it's like you're inside the moon. You look in the mirror, then turn away. Better to just leave. Get your body out the door and into the blue day. You follow the brown sparrow, maybe, perched outside on the rail like a guide. Bring everything already packed inside your skin, a dead brown boy and his free killer, his judge and jury of women, the 6 not guilty bells clanging again and again in your weary ear. No, that's your alarm. It's time to be a poet. You bring your pen and notebook, your poet's eye. You try to follow instructions, write what you see. It's simple. You walk down the road, safe in your pack of poets, women, white. You do not write this in your notebook. Instead, your eyes find and follow the lines that run everywhere, across the street, up the railings, across windows and shutters, siding, shingled rooftops, parsing the landscape into cells. Your white journal pages ruled. You write down all the signs, closed, Peter's Property Management, not for public use. These dunes aren't made for walking. Stop. But you cannot stop. You follow the wind, ripe with salt and already sweaty bodies. You see a pile of beached boats lumped like bodies in a mass grave, a stone wall drowning while sleepy dories drift by. Sun-bleached stumps going slowly to rot. You see the sun marking time as it slips higher and higher. The day stretching overhead, last night's dark already memory. You see an American flag, and below it, the reddening back of a white boy lying face down in the sand, his body the opposite of a chalk outline. You write, the light skitters brilliantly atop the bay's piercing blue. You write, A boy, his light hair lightening to gold, his body so still, still breathing. You write, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so that's the way you kick off National Arts and Humanities Month. The issue of poets as bearing witness and giving testimony. That is truly what we want. I think persons who are considering poetry, but also who are immersed in poetry, to be mindful that that is the job of the poet, to bear witness. So as such, we do have to pay attention to what's happening around us and in our society, but also in our personal walk, family, but within us. You know, we have an impact to make, and it's important that we are on solid footing when we step out as poets to make a proclamation, because poetry is just that. Thank you for that power. I know I'm going to go back and look at the video and listen to it again, because that was so beautiful. Thank you so much. You've certainly given us your voice. So we see, we hear, we receive who Lauren Alleyne is. And let's see, now you talk about your travels, and although that's not happening now for anybody, a massive amount of travels, how have these travels filtered into your writing and your poetry specifically?
Well, I think a lot about, again, going back to that earlier conversation, I'm trying to do this so I don't see my giant self. Okay. The idea of what it means to bring yourself into a space, right? And so travel, I never left Trinidad until I came to the States for college, right? And going from like the small island context, like New York, right? It's like an expansion, right? And I think that's, it just sort of blew things open for me. I was like, oh my God, I could have not known about this my whole life. No, I'm getting everywhere right now. Okay. And so I've been to like 24, 26 countries. I've lost count. You know, I love being a tourist. And in the ways I think though that that people like me aren't necessarily thought of as possibly tourists. So no matter where I go, people think I know things about that space, or you know, they want to ask me how to get somewhere or what the price of something in a store is. I'm like, really? I think I know that, you know. And so I do think that for me, what you're doing when you're traveling is you're giving, just on a purely writerly basis, you're giving yourself so much material that you couldn't conjure yourself, right? Necessarily, right? Until I had seen an olive grove, right? Or until I had seen a Greek ruin, I could have only had notions of those things. So there's this wonderful way of just giving your imagination, giving your imagistic sort of treasure chest, all sorts of stuff to put in there. And then I think on the other hand, you don't leave yourself behind when you go somewhere new. And so the possibilities of alchemy, right, of what you are and what you bring in a new space, right, can make some new thing happen that might not. I don't know if would have written this poem if I wasn't in Provincetown. Yes. In that moment, in that time, with that stuff in me, that alchemy of that moment, that time, and that interaction, that encounter is the word I like to use, made that poem possible. And so those are sort of the two things I think about.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, certainly when we come to writing, we bring our life experience with us, and the beauty of, and I certainly am not a world traveler as you are. I've only been outside of the continental U.S. twice, once Ireland and once to London. But it was eye-opening. I agree. There are things that I wrote in reflection to those experiences that I could not have written had I not traveled. So, and I, you know, this is not a time for folks to be jumping out willy-nilly to say, I'm going to, you know, go here and there, because there are things that we all have to consider. But the fact that you are the repository of all of what you experienced, what you encountered, what you witnessed, what and what you brought to the table when you were there, that if impacted others that were possibly not familiar with a Black woman from Trinidad and all of that, who lived in America, who lives in America and has all of these things to contend with on a daily basis. So I thank you for sharing and that nuance of what your writing offers and what offers, well, what anyone who just decides to travel and bring in that element. I do want to ask Jason or Dr. Gabbin, are there any issues that you feel are relevant to your travels? Because travel is a significant issue for writers. Is there something, and Jason, we know you certainly, you're on roller coasters these days.
Yeah. Is there, so the question is, what are the issues with traveling?
Well, what do you think travel lends or adds to your writing experience?
You know, so it's interesting because it's such a fascinating question, because I typically think of my writing experience as sort of just an extension of my human experience, right? So like I'm always careful about that, because I want to make sure that like traveling is something that is edifying to your person. Mm-hmm. And then like the side effect of that is that it's edifying to your work, right? But like but it edifies you as a human. And I think the one thing that it does, for me at least, well, there's two things. Number one, when you travel, you gain a certain kind of empathy for people who are in your town, in your country, who are new or who feel outside. Mm-hmm. And two, it confirms and reaffirms that humanity is inherently good, yo. Because when you're moving around the world and you need a little help, people help you. Like, you don't speak the language. If you try to speak the language, right? And I'm sure Lauren knows this. You know, if you're in France is the perfect place for this. France and Italy, right? These places, you better know how to say, I'm sorry, I don't speak the language, right? You know, I could say that in like 17 languages, you know? Because after that, they'll say like, oh, don't worry, we speak English, it's okay. But if you don't try, then they'll be like, oh, well, we don't speak English, you know? Like, no English, you know? Okay. And I think lastly, the one last thing I'll say really quickly that for my own personal life is it's very different traveling as a man. Mm. The one thing for me that is always interesting, and as a Black man for that matter, but the one thing that's always interesting is I get to bump up against that privilege in a very real way, because I don't ever feel unsafe anywhere in the world. In America, outside of America, there's never a moment that I am moving around that I feel like I am in danger, unless there are police officers near. But other than that, I'm never scared. And I think it's something that I always am reckoning with and thinking about, like, what does that mean for me in relationship to my women counterparts. So,
Jason, you know, I'm going to have to come back to that point when we come to your interview. Never scared, except when police. I mean, oh my gosh, is that the times? Okay, so I'm going to ask Dr. Gabbin, is there anything that you would like to address on the issue of travel and your experience as a writer?
Well, I must say my first major traveling experience was to Africa in 1971. I said if I went to any place overseas, I wanted to be Africa. So my husband and I, with my sister and his sister, traveled to West Africa. We went to Senegal, to the Ivory Coast, Ghana, and Nigeria. And it was an eye-opening experience for me. In fact, in Senegal, I have never felt so much the American as I felt in that country and in the other countries. You know, I went there, I wanted to do the proverbial thing of kissing the ground. I wanted to say, okay, I'm home and I'm accepted that way as an African woman who has come home. And people were so friendly, so accepting of me. But still, I knew that I was an American, and I felt it very intensely.
Wow.
I remember one of the first images I had in Senegal was this little boy. Well, he probably wasn't that little, maybe 13 or 14. And he said, Black power. And then he started singing James Brown's song, I'm Black and I'm Proud. You know, the culture was so much there, American culture. And I was thinking too of traveling. Traveling has given me so many of the items that I think about, that I try to remember. And in fact, one of the most recent poems that I've written was about my trip to Gorée Island, and being in that place and the spiritual kind of awakening that I had at Gorée. So yes, it's poetry is for me a way to remember. And I'm sort of thinking now about how I'm going to remember important parts of my life in a memoir. And for me, it might be a poetic memoir. I'm not truly settled on it yet, but I'm hoping that I will settle on it soon.
Okay.
So yes, traveling for me is like a repository of memories.
Okay. Well, it's interesting when you said poetry is a way to remember. And I so relate to that, because there are two things that do that for me, poetry and photography. I'm a photo hound. I always want to capture the moment. I said, because I know I have the issue of, you know, memory is not my strong suit. So I'm just trying to build up so that one day when the memory says, no, you don't remember that, then the photo says, yes, you do. So, and the poems do the same thing. So many times we create and recreate an experience through a poem. And there's nothing more satisfying than reading your own poem and being transported back to that time, to that moment. Especially if it's a pleasant one, but even when there are painful realities that we document through our poetry, that poem will forever. And of course, that's the whole point of poetry, documenting culture, society, civilizations. We go back to, you know, beginning of time, and we find what was happening on the planet through the poetry and the art. So thank you so very much, Dr. Gabbin, for that. I'm going to ask, let's see, do we have, let me look in the chat. I haven't, oh, we have shy folks with our group today. I'm going to prod and ask if persons, if you have not considered posting in the chat, please do post, even if it's just comments. It doesn't have to be a question. It can be a response or reaction to what you're hearing. I know our poets are just so very insightful about those things that we're discussing, but maybe there are things that we're not tapping on that you want to hear. And I'm directing this to all of our viewers, all of our guests. Please don't hesitate to, you know, encourage us to redirect to a point that you would like to hear about. Okay, excuse me one second. How about one more poem from Lauren?
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's funny. I love sort of letting the situation kind of tell me what to read. And so I had a different poem planned, but the one I'm going to read is actually going to speak a little bit to this idea of travel and place. And first I have to find it. So give me 1 second. Yeah, that we're talking about right now. Again, this is one of the first poems I wrote when I went to Greece, where I did a little bit of I've been a few times to a writing program there. And this was on the island of Seraphos. Arrival. You look at the ocean, it's fathomless blue, luminous. You look at the brown mountains rising like fresh bread, swollen with some livingness, ready to be bitten into. You are in Seraphos, and you are not in Seraphos. The blue of this water, its own, but calling from you so many other waters. Maracas, Bosphorus, the Gulf of Persia, all lapping at the shores of your memory. You have so many mountains inside you. They are your bread, the food of your soul. Seraphos is Seraphos, and every island that has come before it. Seraphos is Seraphos, and every wave of blue. how everything belongs to something else, nothing untainted by memory or the experience of what has preceded it. How it is impossible to be just one thing in this world of so many entrances, so many openings falling one into the other. A hibiscus blooms at the Benaki in Athens, and another answers at the gates of the house your father was building in Trinidad, in a village, a small village surrounded by cane, which is disappearing, eaten by cement and new roads. Even the ruins of the untilled land will soon be gone. Your father no longer lives in that house where the hibiscus has been replaced, first by buttercups, then ginger lilies, now topiary of green flowerless shrubs. But Greece calls it, and it answers and is here. How we wait to be called, suddenly, without warning. What has been calling you here? To what are you the answer? Seraphos is answering the call of the disappeared in you, calling the sugar and the waters of home, calling the longing for a place so simple you might remember who you are, the components of your being, the white house with the flat roof in a village so small you might forget it is where you spent your childhood. You remember yourself mostly as someone who left, who has forgotten the air gritted with the ash of cane fires, the house with no door and a leaky roof. But Seraphos asks you to remember. Seraphos demands with the dirt road that leads to your blue door, with the palm trees that brood in its heat, in the way you lift your face towards its holy sun. Seraphos calls you home.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. To have such an intimate response to a poem that I have no experience with the content, that's great writing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, and I see that there was a couple of questions, and Dr. Gabbin, thank you for identifying Honeyfish. Is that the book that you were reading from there?
Yes.
Okay,
Honeyfish.
okay. Okay, so please do make note. We're getting good comments. Very beautiful, Lauren, from Catrice Greer. That was a beautiful poem, and that's why it was intimate to me, even though I had not experienced it. I felt a sense of intimacy. Okay, I'm going to ask now then that we transition to our second guest poet. And let's see, why don't we go with Dr. Gabbin? Dr. Gabbin, I'll try to be as, let's see, yeah. I'm not going to use so much of the bio because I feel like our guests are going to get to know you anyway. But please join me in welcoming Dr. Joanne Gabbin to our forum today. Dr. Gabbin, welcome to From a Poet's Point of View. And of course, let me share this information. Dr. Gabbin wedded her love of poetry and her commitment to social justice when she created the Furious Flower Poetry Center. Ever mindful of the children and courageous adults who stepped up into the civil rights movement, her work through the center is at once a witness and an ongoing creative response to the continued dysfunctions of racial prejudice. The diverse voices championed by the Furious Flower Poetry Center offers reason, intellect, and beauty as healing resources in this tense and dangerous world. Dr. Gabbin, as one who has anchored your work through the Furious Flowers Poetry Center, and yes, by now, I'm hoping our guests have captured the reality that I'm making a concerted effort to introduce to you the Furious Flower Poetry Center in hopes that you'll consider it, our guest, as a viable resource for your growth as poets and writers. Dr. Gabbin, can you talk a bit about how memory and poetry collide?
Yes, indeed. I must say, thank you for talking about Furious Flower. I have to say the origins of Furious Flower came out of a memory. when I was in Chicago as a graduate student, I met Gwendolyn Brooks. And when I finished my graduate work at the University of Chicago, as a very green MA in English, I got a position at Roosevelt University to teach a course in revolutionary Black poetry. And of course, I taught the poetry of Amir Baraka, Sonia Sanchez, Hakeem Matabuti, and all of those.
Yes.
And one colleague came to me one day and said, "Oh, you're teaching that Black poetry course?" And I said, "Yes." And he said to me, "Well, you know, we almost got Gwendolyn Brooks to come to Roosevelt University." And I said, "What happened? Why did she turn you down?" He said, "No, she didn't turn me down or didn't turn the department down. We turned her down." And I was appalled. And so it was that memory that made me decide that every time I went to a university, I would invite her as a guest speaker.
Yeah.
And so it was in 1995, I came to James Madison University, and I invited her in 1986. Did I say 1985? I came to James Madison. In 1986, I invited Gwendolyn Brooks. So that memory of that insult
Yes.
made me so angry that I said, you know, this is a woman who had the Pulitzer in 1950, and I am a green writer in 1971, and I can get a job at Roosevelt, and Gwendolyn Brooks cannot. So it was just about this crazy credentialing that we have in the academy. So that, how does memory and poetry collide? That was the impetus for Furious Flower. Because in 1994, I decided that we would not only have Gwendolyn Brooks come back to James Madison University to read, but she would be the focal point of a conference that honored her work and the work of the generation of poets that she inspired. So that's why Furious Flower happened. Furious Flower, of course, comes from the line from a Gwendolyn Brooks poem called Second Sermon on the Warpland. And the lines are, "The time cracks into furious flower, lifts its face all unashamed, and sways in wicked grace." And so now it's history. We've had now 27 years of Furious Flower.
Wow.
And Gwendolyn Brooks was the impetus.
How wonderful is that? Thank you for being the engine behind such an incredible reality and institution building. Truly, I remember Dr. Hakeem Matabuti when he was once a guest at an event that I was doing. He talked about the importance of institution building, legacy foundations, and certainly the notion that anybody would not have welcomed with open arms Gwendolyn Brooks is such an atrocity. I thank you for using it.
Yeah, and too, just recently, to bring you up to date, we just had a seminar, a legacy seminar honoring Hakeem Matabuti.
Oh, okay.
We have had now several legacy seminars. The first one was Lucille Clifton. The second one, Sonia Sanchez. The third, Yusuf Kamanyaka. And then we just recently, we had Hakeem Matabuti. And the one before him was Nikki Giovanni. So we wanted to honor those people who have had a lifetime of commitment to poetry. And so Furious Flower is not only about recognizing those poets who are emerging, but also honoring those poets who have given their lives to this whole pursuit. Yes.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you for that. Now, for these conferences that you're speaking of, is there any video footage available, links that can be shared, information that persons who maybe weren't around or weren't aware of the opportunities then can, view conversations or if that,
Absolutely.
okay,
Well,
anything
the
that you
one
can
smart
share
thing
in
that, yeah, the one smart thing that we did in that first conference, I thought really, Sister Joy, that that was going to be the one and only conference that we did, because I threw my heart and soul into that conference, and we invited more than 35 poets and critics. And so I thought, you have all these people there, you have to document this event.
right.
And a wonderful Washingtonian by the name of Eleanor Traylor knew on the very first day that Furious Flower was something special. And she dubbed it the coup of the century.
Oh,
She meant in literary terms.
yes, yes.
And so we were around there for those 3 or 4 days. We were videotaping the poets, poets talking to poets, poets talking to critics. And we have that documented work at the California Newsreel. So we did a video anthology after that conference, and we've done a video anthology after all of the other conferences. So in fact, we have those videos and other video footage in the James Madison University Library. They have the Furious Flower archive. They also have my personal archive there. And we are hoping that through a grant that we will be able to make those videos available to a wide range of people, available globally.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yes.
Well,
So,
then,
Can I jump in really quickly
yes,
to say
please.
in the chat, I'm the assistant director, so I'm going to do my promo job real quick here.
Yes.
In pursuit of that grant, a group of, in 2019, just before our 25th anniversary at Furious Flower, we did a JMU X Lab class, which is a project-oriented class, and 5 faculty members and 30 students made a prototype as we kept trying to get money to digitize the archive and weren't successful. We're like, this is what we would do if we got it. And so they did a digital rendering of the 1994 conference. So that's furiousflower.org. I just popped it into the chat so you can get a sense of what that event was like. The program is there, snippets of the video. You can see some rare footage of Gwendolyn Brooks reading, "I Am Black." And also, we have our YouTube channel, which is where we document our current events. So any videos that we've had in the last 10 or so years are on our channel, which is also in the chat.
Fabulous. Well, this is very much a part of what I was hoping would happen today, that our viewers and this program, this time together would be an introduction to some, but also an opportunity for immersion into the availability of historic footage, historic experiences, and hopefully some opportunities to create connections. We want folks to reach out to you at Furious Flower at James Madison University. We want people to understand that this is not just history gone by. This is a living legacy that is an opportunity for serious writers. And we thank, I'm just saying so much thank you for even being here. And please, persons, pay attention to the chat. And for those that are not familiar with the opportunity to save the chat, at the end of this 2 hours, that you can click on the ellipses, the 3 dots at the bottom, and the words save chat will appear. And then you click on save chat and you'll have all of the links that are there. All of the responses from today's series will be something that you can go back to. And certainly we're going to ask our guests to please provide whatever contact information that will allow you to be in further dialogue with them about what you experienced and what you'd like to know more about as a result of today. So thank you. I'm going to be saying thank you throughout the whole 2 hours, just so that you know, because I'm psyched. I really am. And I see Jacqueline has posted that Nikki Giovanni is going to be at Busboys and Poets next Saturday from 5 to 8. first come, first seated. Let us know which Busboys and Poets now has either 8 or 9 locations. So let us know which one. Is it going to be in Baltimore? Is it going to be Hyattsville or downtown?
He said the
DC?
Columbia later
Columbia.
on.
Oh, the newest. Wonderful. Okay, so Columbia. So that will be, and you can just Google Busboys and Poets and get their actual address. So I haven't been to the newest one. I posted it on my Facebook page, telling people about it when they did the ribbon cutting. But yeah, we want to see what Andy Shalal is up to in Columbia now.
Yeah.
So he's
the last time I was at Busboys and Poets, it was a part of the 25th anniversary, and Nikki Giovanni and I were at the one of those locations. And she honored me by giving a very short reading as a part of that 25th anniversary there at Busboys and Poets. And so I want to thank Annie Shalal for being a sponsor of our 25th anniversary. Yeah.
Oh, talk about institution building. Andy Shalal.
Oh, yeah. Oh, really?
Yes. Okay. Well,
and in fact, Sister Joy, he was the first one to tell me that at Busboys and Poets, they previewed the Furious Flower videos.
Oh,
they
okay.
showed them there, and I had not heard of that being done at a restaurant before. So he's been in our corner for a long time.
Yes, well, if it's something socially relevant, Andy Shalal is going to pay attention to it. Excuse me, I was honored to be able to, when the Hyattsville location opened, I was honored to be able to broadcast one of my television episodes from that Hyattsville location. And Andy Shalal was one of the guest poets, well, one of the guest artists, because as I think most people by now know, the art that appears on the walls of those establishments, that's Andy's work. I mean, he is socially conscious, but he's also an artist in his own right. And clearly, he's made a statement about what is significant during these times that we're living in. And all of these venues have stamped his signature of relevance to the issues of the day. Okay, so thank you to Jacqueline for that information about Nikki Giovanni. Oh, I see Patrick is here. Patrick Washington, welcome. Is there any overarching mission that you hope to accomplish through your writing? And I'm not sure to whom he directed this question, but Dr. Gabbin, since this is you on mic right now, why don't you field that question first?
Overarching purpose, you know, I really want to deliver in my own writing memories of my past. I want to connect with people who have faith. I want to connect with mothers. In fact, I chose 2 poems today that center around motherhood. Oh. And I must say, one of the poems that would always have a deep, deep impact in my class when I taught it was Gwendolyn Brooks' The Mother. And you know, that poem that starts, abortions will not let us forget the children we got that we did not get. And I just thought about how a poem could have such a deep impact on my students that I said, you know, here, she's a real model. Yeah. As I think about that whole theme of motherhood, I think about Lucille Clifton and the Lost Baby poem. I think about Terry Cross Davis and her beautiful poems about her children. I think about Nikki Giovanni and her poems about her son, Sonia Sanchez. So they have been the models for me in terms of my themes, in terms of what I like to write about. So I've written this poem. Is this a good time to?
Absolutely,
do this? Okay. Yes. I wrote a poem that really talks about motherhood and womanhood, if you will, in the midst of war. Oh. And it also, I suppose, is a reflection too of what I talked about earlier in terms of faith, I'm very much a product of the Baptist Church. So a lot of what I do has nuanced effects from the Baptist Church. So this one is called simply Uganda Girl Soldier's Prayer. Dear God, I used to revel at the setting sun, the red spreading like raffia across the sky, the garnet brilliance ablaze with saffron gleam. Yet now red is only the blood I've spilt, the lost generations of my country's womb. Red is the sign of loss, of deep and abiding grief. For blood seeped into the ground and colored it with weeping. The machete ended my life of sweetness. Sweetness cannot dwell with the vinegar of war. I long to eat my bread under a roof made of a coaly thatch and drink communion with my neighbors. I do not want to die. I am made for life. My body yearns to feel my baby's mouth upon my nipples, a husband's hand upon my knee. I'm not made for war. I long for peace that will envelop me like the water sack that spills out life. I'm not made for discord. I seek the order of my shelves, of beans and peas and millet to feed my family, the order that I need to sleep and dream. I'm not made for this volcano of regrets. Let my song be more than the language I cry in. I want to lay down these weapons of war, pull from my shoulders these straps that press down my womanhood. I want to feel the passion in my loins, rub my inner thighs and feel the numbness leave. I pray that my nightmare of killing does not sour my mother's milk. Let life again fill this rape-ravaged body. Let dance come again to my mile-weary feet. And girlish giggles surprise my tongue. Great Spirit of the Renori Mountains, of the grasslands, of the distant waters, of the great Nile that runs through my heart. Hear my petitions that I whisper into my hands. Dear God, return the water to my eyes so that I may cry and bathe my soul with forgiveness. For I need to feel the holy wintergreen that will heal the sickness of my spirit. So much, too much, I've seen of death and pain, the whimpering of orphaned children, the agonizing cry of old men who have no more to give, the frenzied shout of young men who have nothing more to destroy, not even themselves. I send this prayer out into the universe, for I still believe that there is sweetness there and mercy too. Mercy enough to release me from this albatross of blood. So
before you say anything else, Dr. Gabbin, your poetry is as regal as your appearance today. Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
I needed to say that before the thought passed away, but please continue. Oh, that was beautiful.
Well, you know, I think that poem came out of my processing an interview that I heard from a Ugandan woman, a young woman who was a soldier. And I really combined what I knew would have to be her aspirations to be a wife, a mother, a person who did more with her body than fight with it. So that poem came out of that feeling. Mm-hmm.
Wow. And how long ago did you write that?
That poem was written a while ago. I think it was written in 2008. Yes, 2008. Mm-hmm.
The power is just, oh my goodness. Thank you for that. Now, with regard to, does that transport you to that time, to that place when you read it yourself? do you feel that it takes you to a
Yeah,
specific
it really takes me to that place. It takes me to that interview that I remember her having. It takes me to the news accounts
Mhm.
of the child soldiers in Africa. And, you know, this is still going on.
Yeah.
These battles in so many countries in Africa where young people are spending their youth and losing their lives in battles that often don't make a lot of sense.
Oh, not at all. Yes, yes. Okay. I'm try to stay focused on the questions that I had targeted for you. I do know that, let's see. Okay, so that was certainly a poem of place. So when are there any books of poetry that you have authored that you would care to share with our guests today?
Well, a book that Lauren and I edited, Furious Flowers, Seeding the Future of African American Poetry. This is our latest book coming out of the Furious Flower Poetry Center. And we love this book. It has a fabulous introduction by Rita Dove. And
Oh.
it really focuses on more than 100 poets, younger poets, who are putting their voices out there. And we have essays by more seasoned poets talking about their poetics. So
Okay.
it's a great book, and I would recommend it highly. So
Okay,
this is
and can you put the link in, if it's not already in the chat, as to how persons can obtain a copy or copies?
yeah.
Because you know, the holidays are coming up, and these are the types of gift giving. This is a shameless plug. I get no dime out of this dollar. You didn't know I was going to say it, but I'm saying it. This is the type of gift giving that makes a difference in the lives of writers, and frankly,
Yes.
of anyone who is looking to just become more informed, as you know, as I said, to become to be woke. We we want messages of social consciousness from not just academicians, but from poets and persons who have something to say and say it in a way that can be transformative. So thank you for mentioning that book. I know I'm going to be getting a copy because I don't have it right now. So thank you very much, Dr. Gabbin.
Well, that's Northwestern University Press. I know Lauren has put it in the chat.
Okay, wonderful. Well, let's see, that was one poem. Before we move to our third poet, I'm going to ask you to do a second poem for us. Or am I in a time warp and you already did two? Did you do two already?
No, I just did one. It was
okay.
a longish one.
No, that's okay. I wanted to make sure I had given you the same opportunity to offer a second poem.
I will do this one. This was a difficult poem to write, and it's reminiscent to me of Lucille Clifton's Lost Baby poem, and it's simply called For Alexis. When I look for you, I find you among the trees. They are spirit cabinets that hold the skin and sinew of your soul. While I pass the giant oaks with branching arcs that point skyward, I hear the rustling of your untried voice, hushed until springtime. I walk beneath a canopy of willows, and I am enfolded by the gentleness of your wispy arms. When the red buds blush fuchsia, I embrace your coming. Each year they signal expectancy and new life. So when the gray-brown puppy died, even after I cradled her in a box with a heating pad to mimic the warmth of her mother, even after I dripped the watery milk from a tiny nipple into her mouth, even before I could give her a name, I took her to a circle of trees to say goodbye. The trees whispered, the Lord gives, the Lord takes. Blessed be the name of the Lord. I stammered out a prayer Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Then you were there, my unborn child. I took you in my arms and held you once. I nestled you under my breast and felt the warmth of your blood flowing through unclasped veins. I snatched you from the doctors and nurses who tested your tiny body for folic acid. I would not let them put you unceremoniously in a jar. I buried you in a box carved with your name. And the trees took you up, sucked your spirit into their roots, turned themselves into a beige that I hold in my heart. For you, I have become a planter of trees. The pear tree flowering snow white for the youthful discovery of your body. The purple leaf plum tree for the fertile greening of your dreams. The dogwood with spotted pink flowers to decorate the fullness of your years. So when I look for you, I find you among the trees. I count the rings of your life and watch you flower and wane and flower again.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I'm speechless. I just am. I look forward to becoming more familiar with your writings, not just with you as the legacy builder and community builder and all of what you do, but as I'd love to become more familiar with your actual writings. So thank you for that.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
And thank you for being the trailblazer that you are, and the one who saw a need and stepped up, did not shy away, unapologetically, made sure that even from Gwendolyn Brooks to all that followed those conferences and conventions and opportunities for generations to become informed. Thank you for being the one to ensure that took place.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Again, that was Dr. Joanne Gabbin, founder and director of Furious Flower Poetry Center at James Madison University. And we want to make sure that if our guests have an interest in being in touch, Dr. Gabbin, please put whatever contact information, website, or if it's not already in the chat. And let's see, Dr. Gabbin's book-length poem, I Bet She Called You Sugar Plum. The link is in the chat. Thank you, Lauren, for posting that. Okay.
Yes.
Well, let's see, we're going to go to our, I have a poem to share, but I'm just
share it, please.
After hearing these phenomenal, great, well, I am going to share it.
Please, Sister Joy, share your poem. I'm
going to share this poem that I had selected for the occasion. As inept as I feel right now, I will still share it because it is what I was feeling in preparing for this. The poem is titled "In Praise of Bridges," and I am one that believes there are many types. We honor them, bridges, and thank God they were created for times such as these, when firm footing is key. They allow us to overcome obstacles, avoid difficulties and disappointments, each built and strengthened by ancestors or visionaries who predicted and knew of our need. We must continue to build breathtaking, awe-inspiring bridges that lure and strengthen both builder and traveler. Short or long, fragile or strong, they transport us from that which has ended to new plateaus and possibilities. Some will remain, others will be carelessly or vengefully burned to the ground. Just as bridges lift and guide us, enabling both anxious and weary travelers to avoid stumbling blocks, navigate each brick, stone, or plank while deciphering insightful signals. So our way is directed by these crossings, cleared long ago. For bridges are but signposts, showing us tried and tested ways forward toward our new and waiting tomorrow. In praise of bridges. Okay. That is a poem that I had written actually a little while back, but I wanted to offer it today because I believe each of you are metaphorically bridges. Each of you have created bridges. Each of you offer a way forward for persons to go from possibly stagnant places that they've lingered far too long to new vantages and opportunities for growth. So I offer that to each of you. Okay, now as I promised, we have 3 guest poets today, and our third is frankly no stranger to many on this call, Jason Reynolds. Jason is the author of more than a dozen books for young people, including, and I can't do them all, but Look Both Ways, A Tale Told in 10 Blocks, a National Book Award finalist that was named a Best Book of 2019 by NPR, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, and Time. A native of Washington, D.C., Reynolds began writing poetry at age 9 and is the recipient of a Newbery Honor, a Prince Honor, an NAACP Image Honor Award, and multiple Coretta Scott King Award honors. His book with Ibram X. Kendi, Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism, and You, was a #1 New York Times bestseller. Jason is the 2020 through 2022 National Ambassador for Young People's Literature and has appeared on The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, Late Night with Seth Meyers, and CBS This Morning. He is on faculty at Lesley University for the Writing for Young People MFA program. You can find his ramblings, as he says, at jasonwritesbooks.com. I'll stop there.
We should have talked about this beforehand. I would have told you to skip all of that. You should have wrote yourself into the bio. You should have said, Jason is a young man I've known since he was a 15-year-old that I'm responsible for. Everything he did because of me. Welcome, Jason Reynolds. Then I'd have been like, oh, that makes sense, you know.
Jason, welcome, welcome, welcome. You know, I'm a proud mama. I will always be that way when it comes to you. Every time I see another headline, every time I see another television show that you're sitting there talking, I get this Cheshire cat grin that won't quit. So thank you for being with us today. Even as we were planning, the best your agent could say was, we'll try to make sure he's there because you're in everywhere. So thank you for taking a moment of personal privilege to say, I'm gonna do this for Sister Joy. And I know that's what it was. Thank you.
Forever and ever. Forever and ever.
Well, Jason, I'm just gonna try to be, not just the mama here, but what most often prompts you to write on the topics you choose? What most prompts you to write, for instance, on poems and novels for young adults? Why did you go in that direction?
I mean, I don't, it's interesting for me because I don't really know who else there is to write for. When you really think about it, right? Like, because I get that question. It's like, well, why do you write for young people as opposed to who? Right. I mean, who better is there to write for? I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't, to me, the work that I'm trying to do is sort of to build the readers for the rest of my colleagues, right? To build the readers to understand the importance of Dr. Gabbin, right? That's my job. My job is to create those readers so that as they get older, they understand why there's a Dr. Gabbin and why that's important, why she's important, why Furious Flower is important, why there's a Lauren Alleyne, right? Like, but if we don't sort of start young, then they don't exist. Those readers don't exist, you know? And that's really all I'm ever thinking about, you know? And also, I write primarily for young people, but I think sometimes people forget that I'm still an adult, right? I'm an adult, right? And so people are always like, so Jason, you know, let's talk about kids. And I'm like, cool, but I'm almost 40. And so I still got 40-year-old things happening that I have to address in my own self for my own work as well. And I think I share a weird space where both of those things are happening somewhere. I try to make both of them happen simultaneously, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Well, when you talk about the backstory for your advocacy for that specific audience, and certainly the Library of Congress has you know, taken you to that place of national prominence to, I'm sure, garner invitations from everywhere. But with regard to Jason, okay, let's shift. Jason, the almost 40-year-old who is doing incredible work as a young man, as a young Black man of significance in America. What is it that do you feel has made the difference to open that avenue, open that door for you to be the voice?
It's a good question. Have you ever heard of there's a concept, it's an engineering concept, since you were talking about bridges. It's called resonant frequency. And it's this idea that, like, specifically when it comes to bridges, right? It's this idea that when they're building bridges, they have to build them a very specific way, because if they don't understand the resonant frequency of the bridge, then the wind could blow and the wind could hit a particular frequency that can't really be heard by the human ear and could topple a bridge, right? This is the same exact concept that's used to, like, for the operatic singer to break the glass while singing, right? The way it works is, so I'm bringing it up because this is the way I think about what I'm trying to do, right? The way it works is if you pluck a glass and that glass rings out, right? And if you can match your voice to the exact key of that pitch and sustain it, then, like, the glass itself will sort of liquefy and eventually it'll break if you can sustain it. And the reason why is because you have sort of mimicked the makeup of the glass.
Of the glass, yes.
Of the glass, right?
Yes, because
so
all matter.
Exactly. So if we think of like the resonant frequency of humans, right? Prime example would be like the laughter of a child. Everybody knows the laughter of a child affects us chemically, all of us simultaneously, no matter who you are, no matter how cold-hearted you think you are. The laughter of a child is going to break you down. And the reason why is because we recognize in that sound ourselves, right? We are the same makeup, and that sound is a thing that sort of breaks us. So what I think about in myself all the time when I'm working with these young people is, if I get to know myself really, really well, if I get to know me really, really well, and if I'm able to sustain a particular kind of work ethic and hold it there with my truth, then that truth will connect to the contents of the glass and it will break the glass. Super simple. And that's the way it's worked for me. Right? I really just think it's me not exceptionalizing myself. I'm still just Jason from the neighborhood, right? A little more spotlight, a little more this and that and the third. But ultimately, I think when young people look at me, they see themselves. When they listen to me, they hear themselves, you know, and I think that's it. That's all that's all they've been looking for how many years? That's it.
That's it. Well, certainly the young people are listening to you. You know, books are flying and all of that. When is there a plateau for Jason, the young adult writer that wants to transition to? What is on the horizon for Jason, or is it that this is your quest, and so long as you're doing this successfully, quote unquote, then you're good?
I don't know. I think, I mean, I've written a lot of other things. I've written adult short stories. I got an adult novel coming out next year. I've written, you know, essay work, and I've done a little bit of everything. I think the older I get, over time, it just becomes a little bit harder to stay connected to the youngins. And so, you got to know when to gracefully kind of pull out a little bit, or at least try to put other people on. There's a lot of brilliant writers coming up that I want to make sure I'm, that I'm a springboard for. And also, I just think that like we put too much pressure on, at least to me, especially when it comes to young people's work. I think we put too much pressure on writing something timeless. I think that like no writer should go into anything thinking that they're making a timeless thing. I think we should make things that are timely.
Yeah.
And I think
I totally agree.
like
totally
I
agree.
think
That's part of documenting. That's part of bearing witness. That's part of testifying.
Like it's so
Absolutely.
funny. Like we talk about all of these classics as if like it's like, yo, Fitzgerald, like The Great Gatsby was a timely book when it came out. To Kill a Mockingbird was timely, right? Like, and so I think if you make something timely and if you do it right, you do it well, maybe your book will be timeless. But I have absolutely no feelings about whether or not, like 20 years from now, they're like, Jason, are you still writing for kids, or are your books still in print? The truth is that if they're not, and there are new books taking their place, that means we've done it right.
You've done it right. Absolutely.
Right. We've done it right, and so that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm just kind of taking it day by day and doing whatever I want. I write what I want to write when I want to write it and keep it moving.
Well, let's talk about your writing process itself. For since you target young adults, what would you say to that young adult writer who is trying to express their truth fully and become a poet who is effective in conveying what is happening in the world or in their world?
I would say that it's that like, school, they teach you language art. At least they call it language art, but really they just teach you language. They really teach you art. And so I would make sure that the youngins, what I always say is that this is art. It's like every other creative form, which means you get to play. And I wish, we look at it as science, you know what I mean? And I think it should be looked at as art. Like you can make a mess of things. Right? You can color outside the lines. It can be also, for all my Black babies, you can be abstract. You have a right to be abstract. You have a right to push the line and to make up language and to use your license to do whatever you want. Right? It doesn't have to always be like to me, poetry, my buddy Kevin Proofer, a poet named Kevin Proofer, I think he's in Texas now. He told me one time, he said, to him, he's a white man, which is important for the context. And he said to him, poetry is like walking into a problem-solving machine just to see how the cogs work, but you never actually see the problem get solved. And I thought to myself, man, what a privilege it must be to have grown up knowing that you could just be there to see it work itself out without seeing it work itself out. Yeah. Whereas when I was growing up, it was like, hey, boy, you better say something. You got a limited amount of time. You got right. And I think that if Dr. Gabbin has done her work over the years, and Lauren's doing her work, and Sister Joy, you've done your work, and I'm doing my work, and all these, and Nikki, Sonia, and all these people, at what point do we give the young people freedom to do what they want to do? And to say, you know what? Do your play around. Use poetry as your playground. Use it to get it out, right? But it doesn't have to be statement making all the time. Sometimes a dance is just a dance.
Oh, and see, that's just it. When you talk about dance, that's the concept for me with poetry. I'm working on an anthology that will be put out, and I guess I'm kind of debuting information here now, but the Prince George's Arts and Humanities will be publishing the first poetry anthology with the under the Office of the Poet Laureate. And the title that we're targeting at this time is When Poets Dance with Words. That's what we want to do. And as you know, dance cannot be rigid. You have to be, I mean, certainly there are dances that are formulaic and there are steps that you take, but ultimately, as you know, the human condition is to freedom through dance is what we aspire to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've all been in the party where there's that person who can't dance at all, but is having more fun than the rest of us. Yes, so that person deserves a space on the page. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I really want to encourage for those that are listening that may not have considered that they too could be that poet that has something to contribute to the canon. Yes, you don't have to have all of the all the credentials. Just jump in start dancing, see what happens when, see what happens if, and observe the cogs, but understand that you're not responsible for the clock to keep ticking. So that is very much what we want to do. Jason, let's hear some poetry by Jason Reynolds.
Oh,
yes.
Man. You know, I'm out of practice. I'm doing this for you because
Thank you.
I'm like, man, I'm gonna read some of these poems. They're probably not that good, but I'm gonna read them anyway. I'm gonna read this. This
just stop lying. Just stop.
No. You know what? I promise you. Sister Joy, and be honest with you, I rarely call myself a poet these days. Not because I don't still love it and I don't still. It's still a part of who I am. It's because I'm out of practice and I got so much respect for my partners and colleagues that you gotta be careful just throwing that word around. You know, I feel like I got love for my people who really do this, and you just show up like, oh yeah, I'm a poet. It's like, when the last time you even thought about writing a poem? Oh, it's been 10 years. Hey, my G, take it easy. That's disrespectful. So, but I'm gonna read these poems I wrote.
Thank you very much. Having said all of that, thank you, Jason.
So this is called Model. I wrote this at the beginning of the pandemic. When we couldn't see our parents anymore and our family members anymore. My mother hasn't seen my face in some time, and it's turning our nightly phone calls into painting sessions where she tries to see if she can catch the curve of my jaw, the worry weight in my woolly cheeks, the new growth, an extra half-inch of hair, the one that stress broke off. I tell her I haven't been drinking, or at least I haven't been drinking much. And she thins the paint around my stomach, turpentines the pot from my belly and says, that's good to hear. I say I've gone to get groceries and she dabs her brush in the black and does a wash which will suffice for the t-shirt she knows so well and the jeans and sneakers and the hoodie she used to be concerned about, all from the timbre of my voice. It's a rough, an idea, but still something to hang on the wall and marvel at until morning. But before we say goodnight, before she rinses the brushes, I say again with great uncertainty, I'm all right, but are you? And I know she hears the fear in my voice. I know she's painted the furrow that seems to go on forever. But instead of yes or no, she says, you haven't seen your mother's face in some time and have forgotten what you look like. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's go on a roll. Because we want to try to fit in as much as we can. We want to hear a second poem from Jason before we go back to the chat. There are folks writing in the chat. They told me, thank you. Jason is a writing boss. And Sister Joy is a curator boss. Hey. Okay. So
I just do a short one called, this is called Sap. And this is, it's a poem. I lost my father last year. And I've been thinking a lot about my parents because I'm getting older, so they're getting older, and like mortality is real, and it's all happening, and I lost my father last year, and this was something that I wrote right before he told me that he was dying. But I knew something was up, like my siblings and I knew something was going on because he was changing. And so this is called Sap. All my life, my father has been a 100-year-old tree. Even in his 30s and 40s, always sturdy and thick-barked and impervious to sway. His limbs never swinging, his leaves ever brown and dry, an aggro alarm. He's always needed to hear when people are coming close. He's always needed them to know whose ground they walk on, whose roots they stand on. His life a perpetual fall, brisk and beautiful, but not without signs of winter. And recently, we that used to nest in him, we his chickadees who taloned his harsh and hung upside down and pecked at his bark for years, searching for sweet, have discovered sap. It is sticky, and we are concerned about what has gotten into him.
Wow, thank you for sharing that very intimate piece. Okay, so let's see. We have much love being expressed in the chat, but as was mentioned early on when we were talking, and you referenced about the only time you're scared is when police are around.
Mm,
That is so very reflective of the Black man in America.
mhm.
And so you're and that's in that regard, you're no different than any other Black man in America. And that's a reality that no matter how accomplished yet, no matter how many books, this is your reality for life. Talk to us about that as both as a writer, but also just as a Black man who navigates that daily.
You know, I always tell people one of the most chemically rearranging moments of a Black person's life, specifically a Black man's life in this particular situation, is the 2 minutes between the pullover and the cop walking from the patrol car to yours. I watched my older brother, who's 46 years old, my hero, my big brother is like my hero, big dude, you know, kind of man that is menacing to anyone. And he used his size and his sort of appearance to get through life in certain ways when he was younger. And I remember a couple of years ago, I was in a car with him going to see our father and got pulled in my mother's car, got pulled over and couldn't find a registration because who knows with my mother, I don't, you know, because my mother's my mother. And I looked over to my older brother and he'd become a mouse. He'd become a 6-year-old. And he began to tear up and sweat and panic. And the cop was nice. And he could see the fear and was like, guys, like, I'm, you know, like, calm, relax. It's okay. We'll figure it out. But I thought to myself, wow, just the journey, just those 20 steps was enough to liquefy a man with a constitution of steel. And I think it's something to consider. You know, it's something to consider. I think about it all the time. Look, I was in Brooklyn, already published and living this life and yada, 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 getting stopped and frisked all the time. And then they would laugh when I would say, like, yo, I write books for kids. I don't got nothing on me. I ain't got no drugs, no guns, no, you know what I mean? But I'm up against the wall getting pat down because I look a certain way. And I just think it's a reality that you know, we hashtag those who we've lost, who have been killed. We march for those who have been lost and who've been killed. But the truth of the matter is that there are more of us who have gone through these things and have survived and have to die that death every day. And there's something that's something that everyone should keep in mind.
Yes. Well, I certainly applaud your choices, your life choices. Like you said, you have chosen your look. As you have chosen to be the poet that you are, as you have chosen to live where you live, as in this country, as opposed to any place else on the planet that you could clearly be.
Sure.
You've opted not to make concessions or acquiesce in any way, and that speaks to the power of the poet and the man. And I applaud you. Your example is so needed and so revered by those of us who see it and recognize the choices. And that's what we all do every day. We all make choices. In the poems we write, in the encouragement and the advocacy and all of that, I want to offer an opportunity for, let's see, we have some poets in the house. And I know that before we switch over to reach out to those poets that are online, Dr. Gabbin and Laureate, is there information that you particularly want to convey, to take this opportunity to speak about either an upcoming event or opportunity or whatever you care to share before we transition this last maybe 20 minutes or so to engage our viewers more intimately?
Well, I would just like to respond to Jason's last poem and say that just recently, my husband and I had the honor of having a building named for us at James Madison University. And it was a huge, huge honor. However, I would be remiss if I didn't share that the reason those buildings were renamed, there were Confederate names on those buildings at JMU. Confederate officers who weren't even, living when the university was built, but they were honored. And those names were taken off, and the names of 4 really African Americans put on those buildings. But I know that my honoring was symbolic. It happened because of George Floyd.
Mhm.
It happened because of all those people who were unnecessarily killed by the police and other vigilantes. And so that stays with me. And I take that honor with that kind of gravitas. So Jason, I thank you for your example and for being vulnerable and for showing us the vulnerability of your brother, because we all are here under that weight as a mother. I'm a mother of an older child, but I worry about her. It's not just the men out there we have to worry about, because we remember Sandra Bland. We have to worry about people with Black skin and who embody apparently threats that are worth being killed for. So thank you for doing that. And you also remind me, Jason, of why we have a children's creativity camp, why it was the first activity that we had as the new center for Furious Flower Poetry Center, because we believe in growing poets. And obviously you believe in growing human beings with your writing. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Dr. Gabbin. Yes, we definitely want to let Jason Reynolds know that he is much appreciated and revered because of the work he has chosen to do. And the work is so very necessary. I see there's a couple of questions in the chat before we get to if anybody wants to do a poem. I know many may be intimidated to present a poem in such austere company, but Lauren, the process for publishing, could you speak to your process for publishing your works? You have a couple of books out now.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I will say is there's no process that I've discovered that I can necessarily count on. I was actually just telling this to a class visit I did the other day when they were asking me about my books. It was an MFA class. My first book is on the one hand a product of my MFA thesis, except it came out 8 years after I got my MFA, and only one poem in it is from the thesis, right? So it had this whole evolution. I won't go into it. I was like, poor thing had like identity crisis. It had like 50 names, right? It was just like, and so when my editor, Kwame Dawes at People, was like, Lauren, it's time for that next book to happen. And I was just like, what? I'm still recovering. And then I was like, okay, I respond well to expectations. And so I started looking at what I had around and pulling together this book that became Honeyfish. And actually what it was, I'm in a PhD program, and because on the side, because I'm crazy. And Kwame was like, before you start school, I don't want to bother you while you're in school. So, the summer before, I was like, all right, let me just do this. And I sort of went into it. I had started and then I did it. And I was like, I know how this is going to go. It's going to take 8 years. I'm going to have to, do all this work. But I have this thing. And what I did throughout my 8 years of Difficult Fruit was I just sent it out. Sometimes I got feedback, but it felt like I was working on the book, right? And so I was like, all right, I'm going to do that. And I didn't even tell Kwame that I had anything, because I was like, I'm saving him for when it's ready. Well, the first place I sent it to called and said, you want a prize? And they said, we don't want you to change anything. And I did not know what to do with my life. I was was not ready for that
Fabulous.
experience, right?
Fabulous.
And so, and even when I was telling Kwame about it, he's like, well, one would hope you learned something in those 8 years. which I hadn't thought of, right? So I have no kids, but I imagine I have very different relationships to each of these books. They happened very differently. I love them both differently, right? And so that metaphor, I don't always like it, but I really feel it with these two collections. And in terms of publishing individual poems, the thing I say to writers all the time is you really just have to have a thick skin. You can't be thin-skinned about this work, right? Nobody, I sent out the first book for 8 years, every month till I was like, well, I got a job, so that's what this money's for, right? It's like, I sent out poems, they come back with a no, you send them out again, and that's separate work than working on the poems. And you got to do that work as hard, be as diligent about it, and just kind of recognize that, it can't be like, oh, I didn't get this published. The New Yorker and I have a standing rejection date. They don't publish me. I just send the poems. They say no. I wait 6 months. I send the poems. They say no. We've been doing this for decades. I'm all good. I'm like, hey, boo, we back. You said no again. All right, I'll see you next year. So
Okay.
just do it.
Do it. Yeah, thick skin. That's the answer. Be thick-skinned about it, because every poet that I know that has been published talks about the journey to getting to publish. It's not one poem or one book, send the manuscript to the publisher and your book is published. I don't really know of those stories. So, okay, thank you so much for responding to that. We have a question to Jason also. What was your turning point from transitioning from poetry to novels, Jason?
It's weird. I don't even know why or how. I vowed to never write a novel when I was younger because poetry was my discipline. That's what I studied, and a lot of poets talk like that. Like, I ain't writing no novel. I'm not writing, nothing that's that long, right? We sort of deal in economy.
Yeah.
But I had my first editor at Harper. I was a baby, 21 years old. I was signed to Harper. And my editor there, and I was doing poetry stuff. My editor there was like, one day you're gonna write, you're gonna write a novel. And I was like, I doubt it, not my thing. And she was like, oh, you're sort of like that storytelling thing is all over you. And I was like, maybe, but I don't have the my actual words were, I don't have the education for it. And her response was, that's where you're wrong. She said, your intuition will take you farther than your education ever will. And that sort of planted the seed. And so when I was 25, 26, it just was sort of a natural sort of progression. There were stories I wanted to tell that I couldn't tell as poems. And, every form has its limitation. Every form has its limitation. We don't like to talk about forms that way, but they do. Every form has its limitations, has its boundaries and its limitations, and you can play freely within them, right? But like they all have their bounds, and I had bumped up against the boundary, and it was time for me to try something new. That's all. And so I learned, and I did all the work and took my lumps. There's a lot of unpublished novels downstairs that no one will ever see. You know what I mean? That's a lot of work for nobody to ever see.
Okay.
And then, but eventually you get it right, and life goes on.
And that's good to hear those words, that Jason Reynolds has works that did not get published. If any lesson is ever to be learned, we need to just be encouraged by that. It's twisted, I know, but it's the truth, and it's an important lesson to know. So we who feel that, well, I sent it out 5 times and didn't get any bites. Hey, that's part of the process. So thank you, Jason, for being so transparent. And of course, that's who you are. I mean, if anybody is, Jason Reynolds is. So, but I like that lesson that you're, I guess, I don't know if it was your agent or the person at Harper,
Yeah,
said
my editor.
intuition will take you farther than any education ever will. I wrote that down because I want to remember that when I get discouraged. So thank you for that. Okay, now we do have some guests online that have indicated that they would like to offer a poem. And let's see, Jason, there's comment from Lady Di. Jason, I love that you selected a poem for your mother and a poem for your dad. Lady Di, I picked up on that too. Their love and care make up who you are. Congratulations. So thank you for that. So let's see, the first person's name I saw was Aressa Williams. Aressa, welcome. And thank you for being with us. And what would you offer? These are short poems that everybody, because time is getting away, but we do want to offer, we have 4 that are lined up. So Aressa.
Oh, okay, this is kind of short. No, this is kind of long, but it's going to roll real fast. But I'd like to thank all the poets for their rich information, and I learned a lot today.
Great.
This is called We Wait. Snowstorm Thursday night, no school, dad in rehab, accident, 2 broken legs. Mom stay in New York. Denny, my big sister in charge. Me, Lala, and Sissy do what she say. Miss Murray next door look in on us. Grandma call every day. Uncle Bubba brings stew, soup, casserole. Grandma cook for us. Today, Miss Mary not home. No call from Grandma yet. Me and Denny worry. We wait. Lala, younger than me, scrape the jelly jar for 2 bread ends. Sissy, younger than Lala, eat leftover grits. Me and Denny, last oodles of noodles. Denny called Grandma, no answer, leave message. Denny called Dad, no answer, leave message. Miss Murray not home, Grandma no answer, we hungry, we wait. Denny fussing at the phone to ring like she crazy. Me wondering, where Grandma, where Miss Murray? Lala looking out front at snow all day. Sissy rocking in Dad's chair with her doll. Then Dad called back, he say, don't worry, wait, we wait. Long time later, Lala screaming like she crazy. Uncle Bubba hold Grandma's arm and fried chicken bucket. Baby steps in cold snow. Pastor son walks slow behind him. He carrying a big box of food like at Thanksgiving. Hug Grandma, Uncle Bubba, Pastor son. Uncle Bubba, Pastor son leave out eating chicken. 2 big pieces for Grandma's plate. Me, Denny, and Lala eat wings at the table. Sissy sitting on Grandma's lap, chomping on a drumstick. Me and Denny put so much food away. Lala dancing wild in Grandma's boot like she crazy. Lala say, Grandma, you better than Christmas. The end.
Thank you. Thank you. That was Aressa Williams. For those that some of our friends know, Aressa is a retired teacher, and she is a member of the Literary Leaders of Prince George's County. We're very happy to have you with us. Thank you so much for that offering, Aressa. Okay. Our next poet is Lady Di, and Jacqueline, you're on deck. So Lady Di, please offer your poem. Lady Di.
I had to unmute and then go to my poem, but I'm ready.
Okay.
My poem's entitled, Gracious Actions Prosper. Mommy used to say, in a real tender, kind way, be good, do good, good will come to you. Smile, the whole world smiles with you. Cry, you cry alone, how true. Do something for someone else. Feel how good it feels. Choose to be kind, considerate, compassionate, and polite. Using main and might, perpetually in God's sight, walking in his holy light. We are obligated to teach our children, to teach our youth, to teach each other, share the truth, like our great President John F. Kennedy once said, well, We just have to set up satisfactory procedures to determine whether these actions will be carried out. Good actions not only feel good actions lift our spirits to higher heights. Good actions place us closer to our goals. Daddy would say, practice makes perfect, my dear. Have no fear. Hard work never hurt nobody. Long, steady work brings success and good cheer. Let us thank the youth for all they do, helping others, helping keep elders in technical loop. Let us be here to help youth with math, English, and baking scoop. Fall on our knees and pray, learn something new each and every day. Let love be forever in your eyes as we recognize with good deeds. We say, still I rise to no surprise. We realize gracious actions prosper. Think on it. What is your gap?
Gracious actions prosper. GAP. Thank you, Lady Di.
That
And
was written for Poetry Extravaganza 2016, our 20th anniversary at the Martin Luther King Library for
yes,
Collective Voices.
Lady Di is a member, a founding member of Collective Voices, a poetry group that I established, oh my gosh, over 20 some years ago. And she and I continue to work together on projects and Lady Di, thank you for Girls and Boys with Hearts. She has worked with the youth in Prince George's County and the DMV for years, literally for decades. And we're very happy to have her with us today. Okay.
Thank you.
Jacqueline, you're up, and Bernardo is on deck. So Jacqueline, what do you have for us?
Right. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, good, thank you. The name of my poem is Motherless Daughter. It was created September 10th of 2019. My mother died March of 93. So this is to her. A young child believes that their mother will always be there to make things right. She will kiss the injured body part, and it will miraculously feel better just because of her loving touch. A mother appears to be a superhero or a giant slayer when it comes to protecting her child. There is no one like a mother. A mother's protection starts in the womb and continues until the end of the child's or the mother's earthly journey. None of us are perfect or always make the right decision every day or give flawless advice. Mothers don't come with a study guide or instruction encyclopedia upon becoming pregnant on how to handle difficult situation a child reared. Being a mother is a trial and error process, and one's decisions may or may not prove to be one's best choice at the time in which it was made. My mother's verbal and nonverbal actions always showed me she had my back regardless of the situation. My mother seemed to know I needed an encouraging word or a supportive hand or even a smile. My mother's legacy wasn't monetarily, it was always about family rules. My relationship with my mother wasn't one-sided. It was a reciprocal, mutual, respectful relationship. Some people have regrets about what wasn't said or done while their mothers were alive, but that is not my story. I'm able to rejoice in the fact that I showed my mother every day she was appreciated. There is no one like my mother, and being a motherless daughter is hard. I miss my mother every second, minute, hour, month, and year. I still miss talking with my mother and sharing my day's activities. It is hard to see life the same without my mother in it. My mother made ordinary leisure day at her home special. Today we call those days a staycation. My mother was a fantastic role model for being a mother. I am blessed to have had her in my life for as long as she was there, written by a blessed and thankful motherless daughter.
Y'all, now I have to
Oh,
shout out
just
my
real.
mama, who I think is in here. I love you, mama.
Yes, how beautiful. What tributes to mothers. Um, that's what we ultimately pray, that our mothers feel that from us, whether we say it or not. But I encourage everyone to verbalize. If you have your mother with you, please verbalize the love that you feel in your heart. Bernardo is our next poet, and Catrice will close us out for the open mic segment. And I'll make an announcement about next month after that. So Bernardo, what do you have for us today?
I have something specific for my brother Jason. Jason, I know you got other
My guy, I love you, bro. Long time, man.
I know. And to hear you share that story about your brother and the police officer, man, as another Black man, brother, I can relate to that so much. So I'm going to choose this poem from my chapbook, Bridge Over Trouble. And I'm going to dedicate this, man, to us. Voice, a choice we make. What sound to break the quiet? In a multicultural household, which language to reply with? To communicate, appreciate, explore this mystery of history, of culture, to choose the views of eagles, doves, or vultures. How do I find Sankofa, that mystical winged creature who will carry me over the Atlantic Ocean on a magical, majestic journey? Maybe turn back the hands of time so I will arrive to see, feel, taste, hear, smell the essence of the place my ancestors did once dwell. How do I cross this great divide beyond the fear, the doubt, the anguish, a look, an ear, a heart to part the language? A boat, a plane, a bird, a word to link my soul to heritage, voice as bridge. Bonjour, akulale, et bon chevet. How about a Ghani? How is your family? Grazie per l'aiuto. Ek hoot you lief. Olaroon bukun funo. Assalamu alaikum. Take none of this for granted. They speak 2,000 different languages on the continent of Africa, where my DNA says I am from. But so much information has been lost along the way. How do I find my way home? Or at least the home of my great-great-great-great-great-great-grands. But do their lives even matter? After all, I understand. Home is where I am, where I stand, kneel, pray. How do I use voice as bridge to commune, to communicate, to bias, privilege, hate? What words can I say when video and body cams make their points of view a sham? What is it I can say? And if I can't make it okay, how do I find Sankofa, that mystical winged creature to carry me over to where I am safe, to drive while Black and have no fear, no apprehension of what moves I make, or even in these states of grief to still find peace, asking God to lead the way to where I may learn how to forgive, prayers sent to where He lives, using my voice as bridge.
Thank you, Bernardo. Voices Bridge. Bernardo and Lady Di are both members of the literary leaders of Prince George's County, as well as Collective Voices. So we have Collective Voices in the house today. I hope everybody has made note of the invitation that was posted for poems to be submitted to the Furious Flower for consideration of publication. That was posted by Lauren and says the address is in there. So again, remember to save the chat so you have all of this great information. Catrice is going to close us out with the final poem of the day. Catrice, welcome and thank you for being with us. What would you offer us as a closing poem for this event?
Thank you, Sister Joy. I'm happy to be here with all of you today. I'm going to offer Today We Rebuild. It would be at another time I would do a different poem, but the poem is long, it's sprawling, and it's 5.5 minutes long. It's called Mama Mensas. It's the one that was nominated for the Pushcart Prize for 2021. But today I'm going to do Today We Rebuild. It is about extrajudicial killings. My mind is drawing a blank.
That's
Please
okay.
bear
Just
with
offer
me.
the poem. Just
Immigration,
offer the poem.
etc.
Okay.
And I use an allegory of nature. Today we rebuild. So much left unsaid. Covered in hay and manure, we called it garden. Said it was floral and pristine. Said the silences were natural. Said the dark-barked fallen oaks, cut down by men with axes and strong-armed into submissive woody death. We said it was the natural order of things. Seedlings left caged in winters we made, root systems tilled, separated, broken into pieces, overwintered in summer. We said it was the natural order of things. Seeds blown from path to patch in need of fertile places to land, spread roots, grow, took them tagged, grabbed by throats, splash paint their fronds with red, corralled them, and we said it was natural. Lit a match on fields we wanted to flourish, but wanted to reign over for all time. We left it as a glowing conflagration, never speaking of the blazing wall closing in, burning down the fields we know are ripe and lush, the fields that feed us, the fields that nourish our humanity as whole harvest. We took spades, shovels, poles, dug in, aerated, turned the soils, migrated some in, brought in backhoes to trudge up the moist, worm-ridden fungi past. We said we did not want to repeat. No matter where we dig or climb, we come upon the fire we left untended. Thank you.
Thank you, Catrice. What a phenomenal poem to end our program today. Thank you so much for that contribution. Again, and Catrice and I see Saini Cisse, the Youth Poet Laureate of Prince George's County, is on this Zoom today. Saini, I'm sorry, I did not see you offering a poem in the open mic, but I do want to acknowledge your presence, as I also acknowledge the presence of Patrick Washington, the Talk About Legacy building and community building. Patrick Washington, who is doing so much for the young adult and teen community in Prince George's County, DMV at large, now just spread his wings and is doing Youth Poet Laureate programs from Baltimore to DC to Prince George's County and to Northern Virginia. So we have wonderful support for this program today. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of it. Thank you to each of our featured poets, our guest poets. I'm speaking of Dr. Joanne Gabbin and also Lauren K. Alleyne. Is it Alleyne or Ellen? You're muted. So
Lauren Alleyne.
Lauren Alleyne, okay, thank you. And certainly Jason Reynolds, thank you to each of you for being with us today and for making this an incredible National Arts and Humanities Month celebration, where we are acknowledging and paying homage and tributes to each of you and to those who came before, being a part of the community of voices that hopefully is shining the light, encouraging others. I very much want to invite everyone to be with us again next month when we come together. And let's see, next month will be our November session. Let's see. Thank you. Let's see, looking down, Cliff Bernier, Patty Ross, and dialect teen poet Joanne Ellis will be with us on November the 20th for next month's From a Poet's Point of View. I hope some of you today will come back and continue the dialogue, be a part of what is happening. Save the date right now on your calendars, your phones, your electronic devices. You don't want to miss this lineup. We're nearing the end of the series. We've just got 2 more to go, but always I invite everyone to pick up a pen and keep writing. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Sister Joy.
Can everybody unmute and just show a round of love for our guest?
Thank you, Sister Joy.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
We enjoyed it.
Thank you.
It has been my absolute privilege. And we promise to get the link up as soon as possible so that you can share it, share this experience with friends and family and would-be and established writers. Thank you so much.
Joy,
Yes.
I just wanted to let everyone know that in the chat, I put in our links at Eventbrite for all of our events. We do have another literary event occurring on October 30th with Dialect of Prince George's. I put the link in there and just wanted to thank everybody.
Absolutely. And for those persons on this call who are interested in grants information from Prince George's Arts and Humanities Council, the voice you just heard is that of Sherry Moore, who is the coordinator for that, for those opportunities. Sherry, did you put your contact information in the Zoom chat?
I'm doing it right now.
Okay.
We have an upcoming, we actually have an opportunity on the website, which is a 50% reduction in price for any programs that you want to have at the Prince George's Community College. So I just put that, and of course the other new opportunities, I just put it on the website for additional information.
Okay. So we're about trying to foster a greater engagement with the arts, certainly with the Arts Council, but with the arts at large. So thank you, everybody, and see you next month.
Okay, the one that's coming up on the 20th, where would that be located at so you can sign up for it?
The one that's on the 20th, it will be virtual just like this. So
Yeah.
it will be, yeah, I will be posting it on Facebook. And the Zoom chat will be posted later, but the event itself will be posted probably within the next 2 weeks. And then the Zoom link will be added about a week before the event.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. So thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.